Okay, guys, so welcome back. We have Roman here. He's working at Cyanide, which is an AI tech startup basically in Berlin. And as you know me, I'm quite excited about music and AI, so I'm very happy that I have you here, Roman. Nice to meet you. How are you doing? All good?
I'm doing great, Mario. Pleasure to meet you here, and I'm looking forward to our talk. Thank you for the invitation.
Cool. Maybe if you want, because I always like to give a quick idea of what people do, and I know you are a chief AI officer at your company. If you maybe want to quickly say what do you do in your job and how did you end up there, I think that would be a cool start off.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as a CAIO of the team, of the R&D team, basically being the lead, R&D team is not the biggest, I have to say, as we are a startup, but we are a team, and strategic decisions there. Basically, building up the roadmap, thinking about what we will build, but also still hands-on programming, building products. And yeah, maybe to just also give a bit of an overview of what Cyanide does, so that people can understand better what this is all about and what my daily bread and butter is. So at Cyanide, we basically build tools that allow owners of large-scale music catalogs to bring structure into those. So often you can imagine that companies have very big catalogs of hundreds, thousands, or millions of songs, and they don't even really know what is in there. And we allow them to basically harness them and to leverage all of the music that they have properly. So I'm working very deep into music. My main focus, I would say, is representation learning, embeddings for audio and music, large-scale retrieval systems. That's, I would say, where I am mostly focused on conceptually.
I think it's interesting that you say that the users are it sounds like it's the labels basically that do this more than it's the artist, because actually I noticed Cyanide 2 years ago because I couldn't find the right words to describe the song that I wrote. And when you pitch a song and stuff like this, you always have to find the right words. So it's quite interesting that your key user group seems to be not the artists themselves, but the labels. Can you say what is the motivation behind that? Is it the same that what I just did, or why would they want to understand this?
Well, first of all, I'm super happy that you found us through this, Mario, because this is basically what makes me most passionate about it, that you can basically allow artists to kind of interact with their music, understand it, also allow them to kind of speak about it in a language that allows artists to pitch the music as well. So that's super cool. I would say B2C is certainly also a focus that we have. And we do have a large pool of customers like yours that just want to kind of understand the music, interact with it in a way that basically you would conversate with a virtual expert. So that is part of the thing. Mainly the business is however also focused on a B2B perspective. So as you already said, labels play a role here. Also, production music libraries, for everyone that is not so familiar with the term, that is basically the same for music like stock imagery would be. So just libraries that provide music for films and so on. Then we are also having companies in the field of sound branding. Sound branding, also to define this term here, is basically companies that build up a sonic identity for brands. And of course, they are also super interested in how to quantify songs or music or even jingles or something like that into a direction and make their customers understand what they actually provide to them. So I think we are going a parallel way here, like you said, for artists, musicians. That's also what what pushes me personally, and of course the money cows are also in there, bigger businesses, bigger labels, and so on, with just very big catalogs.
Yeah, cool. But then at the end, it's quite related to marketing at the end of the day, right? Most of the times, kind of understanding how the product that you build, right? How to describe it, how to make it, suitable for other people. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is certainly, but I think it also at the same time has a like an educational approach to it, to kind of tell people what is there and like teaching people to understand what their music is basically. So that's an important part for me as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious what will happen because I think yesterday I saw it that Spotify like they previewed like a new feature which was like a prompted playlist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then especially there, like I'm always like wondering how do they even make up all the playlists that they have, right? Like how can they recommend a song that suits so perfectly to
Mm.
my mood or to like to the playlist? So I'm pretty curious what will happen also over the years.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're also at the cutting edge at the end of the day, right? Because I saw that you were at some conferences also with your company.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just that you build a product, but you're really like probably discussing with a lot of people in the field and what is state of the art, right?
Yeah, I would say so. So like this prompt-based feature that you described that Spotify has for their playlists, which I also saw, and I got quite reminded of our product because this is also what
Hmm.
we offer. We also offer this kind of prompt-based search for like the catalog of the user.
Hmm.
So quite the same idea, and it's very exciting, of course, to see that this works in our field in the ways of Spotify does it with playlists, which is basically also you can see as a musical entity. So it's very similar, I think, in terms of the product which they're offering. And yeah, we are lucky enough to also be able to travel around to go to conferences. Also,
Hmm.
as I heard from you already in the beginning, you are also publishing a bit. Personally, we also now since this year are at the point that we can also publish our work again partially. So
Hmm.
we did that this year in October in Korea, where we published a paper on model bias in representation models for music. And I think for me, that is also something that I really enjoy to kind of connect with researchers worldwide and to kind of exchange ideas, because I think in the end, talking about the work that you're doing with like-minded people helps you most to get inspired, have new ideas.
Yeah.
It's just great.
100%, yeah. And if you, I mean, I think you could probably make a pretty informed answer to that. But if I would ask you, like, what do you think the future of AI or data would look like, maybe in like your industry, like music,
Mm-hmm.
tech, what do you think would it be?
I think that, yeah, probably it's going to be quite similar, like also in other domains. Music
Mhm.
is always a bit behind because it's kind of the exotic and smaller field. But I think that from time to time, model performance will maybe even matter less and less because we are getting to a point that we are just reaching a glass ceiling and the models will just understand
Mhm.
the most of the things. And I think building the right systems and the right pipelines will matter. So that you have a product idea and in the end you know how to use the model and how to integrate it into your product. So I guess what I would be hoping for is to have less of these generic foundation models that can just do everything to a certain degree, but maybe
Mhm.
not perfectly, and rather to have specified models that work well for the case that you aim for. That
Mhm.
I think especially in music is quite important because you have so many different layers of understanding music. You have I mean we are talking about music in a very different way than people, for instance, in Korea talk about it. We had discussions with a customer from there, and they are generally very happy with our product. But in terms of genres, they just have an entirely different
Mhm.
idea of that. And I think that in these fields, in the end, it's a matter of data, and in the end, it's a matter of understanding that and curating that properly and building models that really work on a global scale is going to be
Mhm.
the way to go.
Okay, I understand. And if you, because I often hear when I tell people that I do, for example, research, right? It's very hard for them to see the value in that, right? And
Hmm.
especially something like data science, right? It can, from the outside world, can always look like, you're trying out a lot of stuff, you're doing a lot of experiments, right? But like, then people will ask, like, where's the value of it, right? And I mean, if you're a startup, someone will also ask you, where's the value? And I assume, right, just my assumption that the way you think about all of this is also with a product lens, like how can you make it a successful product. And what would you say, like from your own experience, what works quite good from like taking maybe an AI idea or, you know, like a model, and then like taking it all the way to then actually making it a functioning product that might even have a market that, you know, works well?
I think there is not one answer that I can give to that. I think it depends a lot on the person that you are and on the way that you're working. For me personally, I can just say I really love prototyping stuff. So I often also take this time for research that we've been discussing about. Like as you say, people may ask, what does it help in the end to kind of try out and research on things. And in the end, I guess having a good idea and understanding how you can put it into something is just, if you are especially like working as a company who is having also other big companies in their surrounding with Google and OpenAI, which are also potentially pushing into the same fields, is just very necessary. And it's a matter of also responsibility that a leading role in an AI team has, just to try out and build new things, prototype, and push also their colleagues to do so. And very often you sit at one thing that has to be done, and it takes you 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and you are not progressing at all. And then you just have one idea for a separate thing. You just put it beside the work that you have been doing, and then in 1 hour you have something entirely different. It's just also very rewarding in a way. Then, so I think that living this creativity based workflow is something that I would propose to people who think about that, to kind of allow yourself and also showcase the prototypes to your colleagues, who in the end will agree that it makes sense to try out stuff.
And when you say prototype, like, because like I did some work before also research wise with prototyping, and what I always found a lot of times was that a lot of people say that, you know, like you can have a cool idea, you have a cool like design, and if you have a design, right, and it's a normal product that you can like program, it's almost certain that you can build it, you know. But with a model, I think it's slightly different, because you don't know, do I have the data? What model do I need? Is there anything that you can like maybe share that works, that how you do it to get to a state, you know, that you don't not like in a spiral endlessly like coming up with ideas that can never be built? Because I think that what a lot of companies are actually doing, especially if they're not very AI focused.
Yeah, I think I would definitely say, if you are thinking about a prototype, don't put too many ideas in it. Go for the most simple solution. See if that works. If that works, you can build on top of that. And also, as much as I recommend to do prototyping, you also have to kind of set an expectation and a deadline for it, and go for the simple solution that will, in the end, in the best case, serve as a proof of concept in the end. If this works, the other thing also will work. So it requires a bit of a statistical intuition, I guess, so that you can basically map scenarios on each other. You have an idea, maybe you build something that kind of does the thing in a more simple way, abstract it to something that is more on the lower end, and go from there. So
yeah, I understand.
In the end, if you build a prototype, just go for the simple solution first, see if it works already, and then you can still try something harder. If it works already, even better.
Yeah, I understand.
Don't make too many steps mentally before you build something. First, try the easiest approach. That's, I guess, the message.
Okay. And I mean, what I'm also always wondering is, I mean, I saw your CV. It looked relatively like straightforward. You had like some type of, I think, IT, telecommunication type of like bachelor, and then something with audio. So like the connection makes sense. But maybe from your standpoint, but also for other people who like, you know, want to potentially go into the area, how would you describe how you ended up where you currently are? Like, how did you go from like you being probably out of school to where you now are? And are there maybe things that you think could be helpful for others?
Well, I think I would say it wasn't quite that straightforward. I actually studied psychology first, so I was in an entirely different direction, which, however, was not too I just really liked numbers, which is why I ended up in this computer science direction in the end. And well, how did I develop there? For me myself, it was that I started engineering with like a very big fascination for music already. Back then, it was more like a thought of building amplifiers, so more like this really hard, typical electrical engineering career. And then I just realized that for me, signal processing and back then, yeah, algorithms. It wasn't really AI back then, 10 years ago,
Yeah.
or even more than 10 years ago by now. It wasn't really the thing. More like signal processing and um, uh, machine theory in that sense. And I was then doing an exchange to a university in Portugal, in Porto, and there was actually a how's it called in English now? A faculty for music informatics, a very small one, and I was absolutely fascinated. And they were giving master's courses there, and I was still in my undergraduate, and I still wanted to really do these courses, and I was asking them if I can still join, and they were like very open, and it was super nice. They were extremely invitive and very much also familiar in a way, which I wasn't used to at all from coming from the Technical University of Munich, which is just this giant instance in a way, academic instance. And I was just feeling very good there. And I happened to basically stay there then for quite some time, even worked there at a research institute. And I got to know a very cool team. The sound and music computing group in Porto. Had a super nice supervisor who also supervised my thesis then. I just basically stayed there and finished my studies, and then the choice was kind of clear for me. So now I took quite a big of turn, a turn to explain what I would suggest, though, is I guess to look beyond what your usual path would be. So maybe contradicting to your first impression of my CV, it wasn't that straightforward, and it was more due to the fact that I kind of just thought I will like look at this now and just be kind of courageous and to try out something new, follow a path that I wouldn't have thought of before, and then meeting the right people is always a good thing. So
I feel the answer. I also studied like becoming a teacher before I did what I do now. So I understand it. I also think it's cool. And maybe the one thing that people can take away is that, just because you start one thing and you notice maybe you're not so happy with that direction, that it's totally fine to switch, right? Because, in Germany, especially, that sometimes, a thing that people frown upon, like, why do you change your degree? So yeah, I think, right, two examples, I guess, you and me, of people, right, who did this, and then it worked out probably better than if you would have stayed where you are. We never know.
How funny that you also had a social like idea before your career path is that's quite charming.
Yeah, and I think there's even a lot of similarities, or not similarities, but like relations to like, psychology and how people operate, because right at the end, that's kind of what AI is also trying to some degree, at least, to do. And I always noticed, and that might be the next interesting question to understand, also, right, that working with people who have different backgrounds is often way more interesting than if you just like come all from the exact same place, both like either like academically, or maybe also like, maybe where you came from, or where you worked before, or what you thought about and stuff like this. So maybe to put it into a question, have you noticed in your like years working, maybe also now where you are like maybe more in a managing position, but also working closer to the research, before, if there are any specific maybe pathways or like roles that a lot of people don't really know about, but that are very helpful in what you're doing. Like, right, most people, for example, there was this article by Harvard that says like data scientist is the sexiest job in the 21st century, right? But I'm pretty sure not everyone had studied data science who you work with every day. And maybe you have like a few examples of people where you feel they add like quite a unique value to what you're doing. that might come from a background that is not so traditional.
Absolutely. I think like regarding the data science thing, it's also just also a field that is quite recent. I mean, it has existed before, but by now it's kind of blossoming due to the era of AI. Certainly, it becomes just very important to have people to kind of understand data and curate it in a good way. And I do also believe that people in this field often come from very different backgrounds. I think like in the company that I am at now, at least the data science paths were quite similar. Yet I think what I can say is that a lot of people who are ending up in the company now, which is doing AI, music AI, have a very different backgrounds. So we have musicians that went into programming. We had people who are not having any engineering background working with us now. So it's as you say, eye-opening thing to work with people who are in the end very, very different. And I think probably surprisingly, it is less than half of the people that work in our company who have an engineering major. So they come from very, very different directions, and that's very cool.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I also talked to a lot of people before who also like came through very, very interesting ways. Let's say it like that, to data science or to other roles. So I think it's very, very cool, very interesting.
Yeah,
and happy that you also had good experiences with that, and that you can be an advocate for that. Yeah,
absolutely. And I also believe that at least from my personal experience, I feel like it is a very welcoming field. There is not a lot of prejudice against people who don't come from this specific university, and it's just in the end a matter of like how well you fit into a team, and also how good you understand problems. It's a lot about like like understanding real world problems and mapping into them into some kind of a system. So I think it needs a lot of intuition, and that's not something that you buy from a university degree or something like that.
Yeah, but at the same time makes it a lot harder, I think, to understand what you need to know, I think.
Yeah,
so is there a way that you could maybe frame what skills that this is, or what skills these are that you think like help you? Because like thinking or saying that you should be you should have an intuition, right? It's hard for a person who doesn't have the intuition in the first place. Maybe there's some things that can help people, because for just one example, I was very bad at math in school, right? Nevertheless, I basically do stuff with numbers all day or with data, but it's just because the way that I learned it in school, or the way that they taught it, the way I was taught to think about it, didn't work for me. And it was very helpful, right, to then like get other ideas on how I could potentially gain the skills that would help me. So yeah, I think it would be cool to understand what skills you really think would be helpful for people to get into the field that you're in.
Is this why you wanted to become a teacher, to be a better math teacher?
Yeah, not for math, but it's part of the reason why I started it. Yeah, that I thought the way people taught didn't click with me too much, and I wanted to make it better. And I mean, at the end, I'm still teaching people right now with like videos, or like also in my job. So I kind of still have that in me now. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. That makes sense. To answer your question, what do you need? I think if you want to do it, if you have a big interest, you can do it, usually. I think there is not something that I would say, if you don't have this, then just don't do it. That wouldn't make sense, and I also don't want to discourage someone with that. I think what is like very helpful though, in the field, working with data, working with AI, especially in times like these, where LLMs can very often solve tasks for you, which go to a high degree of expertise already. I believe it is that right now it's the time for generalists to shine, for people who have an understanding of a lot of things, not necessarily super much in depth, but who can like oversee the full circle of a product, at least to a certain degree. So from the beginning, from the question, what does a customer need? Why do we want to build this? To how can this look like, to how do I map this into a technical product? How can I implement this? And then up until the end of how can I make this production ready and actually ship it so that it works in a robust way. So I believe that you don't have to be an expert in all of these things. You just have to have a general interest in all of these things. And it helps you to kind of wanting to know all of these fields. And then I think you can basically do a lot from that. And this is also where you get the inspiration from and ideas. I think that helps you way more than to just study every recent paper, every recent model that has been released by a company, and then to compare these against each other, because in the end that is a cat and mouse game. And as soon as you will have seen what one model does, the next will be released and it's going to be outdated. I think you have to rather see these things as tools and then have good ideas how to actually apply them within your product, from start to end, from alpha to omega in the end.
Yeah. I think I pretty much think exactly the same way about it. Right, because I do a master in AI at the moment. I still would not say I'm like a engineer or anything like that, but I try to teach myself exactly what you just described, like, understanding how I can make sure it solves a problem, then like trying to come up with the design, and if it like is understandable for people. And then of course, right, once you have, that's also why I asked you about the prototype thing, right? Because it's very easy to have a prototype nowadays that looks fancy, but then if you cannot make it, work and get into production, then you haven't really solved the problem fully yet. Yeah. So very interesting what you're saying in that sense, for sure. One thing that I think would be interesting, because I think people don't get often, especially not like, people who are not data scientists, an understanding of how a person dealing with these types of problems with the speed, right? Because I think people are always very overwhelmed by the speed of everything, right? And when I say that, I mean like the superficial speed that you see, not even what you described going into papers and reading them, right? Because it's basically undoable. But how would you describe you stay up to date on what can be done, or do you not stay up to date and you basically get up to date when you need it? Like, what's your working style?
Yeah, very good question. I mean, for me myself, I sometimes also feel a bit overwhelmed by all of the development which is taking place at the same time. I think it's just important to, in a way, also stay calm and focused on the product that you're currently building. Usually you have something like a roadmap and then you just finish it and you try to finish it. And in the end, it doesn't help to be like a big expert on how text-to-speech programs are developing at the moment, even though it might have been a field of interest for you once. But if it's currently not the case, then you just don't have to focus on it so much. So I think in a way it helps to definitely know what is going on, how general LLMs work, how multimodal models work, how synthesis models work, and so on. It definitely is this something that should belong to your portfolio, to understand that to a high level degree, to be down there in like in the nitty gritty number work. I think is quite unnecessary for the things that you are not in detail working on. If it's not your specific interest, of course, if you want to, nothing speaks against that.
Sure, yeah.
But I think it's not necessary to kind of be super up to date into the very monthly development of every field. If you are currently working on a product and I mean, this is maybe something that you have to be up to date with. You should know where to look and what to find. And then if you need it, you will find it. But if it's not within your field that you're working in currently, and maybe you will work on it in 1 year again, it won't help because it will have changed up until then, I would believe. Yeah.
And is there any hack that you use? Like, for example, what I noticed like in the last 2 months, what I was doing more and more is because I had to get into a lot of topics very quickly. And of course, didn't have the mental sanity to read like 50,000 papers about everything. So I actually oftentimes nowadays use like also AI to find like relevant research and like let it get summarized, or maybe sometimes I also like speak to cursor, which sounds a bit weird at first, right? But if you give it like enough context and so on, or the search functionality, it can also come up with a lot of ideas. Is that something that you also do, or do you still trust like more your, let's say, own research capabilities, and you see like dangers in that?
I think I would certainly not want to say you shouldn't use AI to do research. I think it can be a very helpful tool. I also do use that if there's like an idea that I have, like what sort of a model I could use for this case, or what is a good model architecture for this case, and so on. I think what I usually would do is that I have something in mind, I have an idea, I try to challenge it with an LLM and ask the LLM, what is a better idea than this? Already kind of phrasing it in a way like that. I think where it gets a bit, where I wouldn't necessarily recommend it is just to take every recommendation from it and just adjust it accordingly to that. I think that's still what a lot of people are currently doing, and it's working surprisingly well still. I mean, this is how vibe coding works in the end, and it's just something in the end that I wouldn't feel very comfortable with it myself, because then I would kind of have the feeling like I don't have there is nothing of me in it anymore. Any agent could do that for me if I just always take the first thing. I think it can be a very good thing to get you inspiration, and also for solving tasks like coding tasks, refactoring code, and so on. Just implementing a quick idea, that's where it can be very helpful. And in the end, what of course also helps, apart from LLMs, is to have a good community already, which basically publishes research as well, and you can just read what the people around are doing. And that's, for me, the best way to stay up to date. I am well aware that I'm kind of in a privileged situation there, because I have spent a lot of years already in the field, and therefore I kind of know people, and I have that community more around me. But basically, LinkedIn is there, and you can follow people there and read what they share. I mean, LinkedIn is a bit of a dangerous place as well, because it contains a lot of low quality content as well, I would say. But it can help a lot also to just see what other people are currently working on. So I would definitely encourage to, in a way, also keep some personal interaction if that's possible. And also just to, for instance, write a message to someone. If you have a specific question, don't hesitate. Also, if you want to write me a message, feel free to, and I'm happy to answer that out to anyone there.
I think it's a very, very beautiful and social way to think about it. I think I definitely I wouldn't say I disagree with everything, but I think sometimes it can also be helpful if you see like a bad solution by AI. So, because recently I had an assignment in my AI master, and we were allowed to use AI for it, right? Because the teacher basically said, "Hey, yeah, like that's like it's reproducible code, right? It's basically on the Keras like documentation. You just have to like copy it, so you can also just use Google Colab to write it." And I asked it to do it for me, and then it came up like the task was to detect logos on images, and to basically like transfer learn. So like use an existing model and make it learn. But the problem was that the AI came up with a too complicated way to structure the model. And then like the accuracy was absolutely bad, right? And I was like questioning every part of what I did, like the data and all of that, right? And at the end, it was basically just that there were like two settings that I didn't understand, right? So I couldn't like critically think about it, that were off. But then like when I then dived into the problem, right, and got confronted with exactly the problem, I had the feeling that I understood way more about it than if I would have just read the documentation by itself, because you see then actually the outcome instead of just like learning the rule or something like this.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is just also the hands-onness of it. I think maybe it's not even the fact that it's done by an LLM. It's just also something. I know that not everyone agrees of this idea of the learning types, the different ways that people can learn easier. However, I think there is kind of flavors that people have on that. And I also think I would belong to the group that just understands things so much better if you have a hands-on example and to do something. So that would basically be before the AI era that you just have a Medium article that implements something and you adjust it to your needs. And that is, by now, of course, way easier because you can have an AI write that thing for you. And then you just see the code, see how it looks, and understand it through that, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that helps a lot more than just reading a dry documentation often.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. I could obviously speak about this way longer. I always try to keep the sessions somewhat to like maximum 40, 45 minutes if possible. So
Sure.
you already like invited people to get in contact with you. I think also people should take a look at Cyanide. Even if you don't do music, it's just interesting to think about like, right? Because we all consume music, and just interesting to think about how you could think about music beyond just, I like it or not. But what I would want to ask you as a final thing is if there's anything that's like any famous last words, it could be a book recommendation or any tip that you think would be helpful or that you heard from another person that you would give to people.
I think you had this question in there, which was, what would you do if you were in your 20s again, or if you could be in your 20s again?
Yeah.
And that was, I think, like a general, a beautiful question, because it's not only something that would be interpreted as work-related only, and it kind of made me think in general, because it's a nice reflection. And I think here we're closing the circle also a bit, because I believe that this courage that we were talking about to kind of step out of this usual path that you would go and that people would expect from you just very often gives you a lot of perspectives that you haven't thought about, and gives you more chances to see what is also there. And maybe in alignment with this, we can also say that I think the 20s are an age that at least I know a lot of people who were extremely perfectionist in what they were doing, because that's kind of also the environment that you're in the school, and then in universities where there's just a lot of stress that is put on you on purpose also, because they want to see how strong you are in the end. And I think that like letting go of this perfectionism, allowing yourself to fail also, is a very good solid ground for building up things that maybe you haven't thought of before. And think outside of the box is maybe a bit boring calendar quote here, but in the end, that's, I think, what I would like to propose to everyone here listening to this podcast. If it is people who are kind of getting into the field, don't get focused too much on the one way. There's potentially more, and don't get frustrated too easily, because failing is a part of it as well. And keep up the courage.
Nice words. Thank you very much for your time, and for everyone else, see you in the next episode.